This is the Eye for an Eye channel. Welcome to today's show. I wanted to cover this because this is a repetitive story that we hear every year. For those of you that have followed my channels over the year, despite being a new YouTuber, you know that I've covered every single year. There's some type of thing with the Satanic Temple and doing some type of display for Christmas. And of course, this gaslights and this infuriates Christians. And then you have the mainstream media like Fox News, which plays to the Christian audience. They begin gaslighting them, when in reality, what people need to start understanding is that our government funds the Satanic Temple. Our government had made them tax exempt under Barry Obama immediately, tax exempt. They're funded fully by our government. And the purpose of them and what they do is they make sure that Christianity is wiped out and removed from all locations. To bring about a one world religion, they're going to end all religions. And that is the purpose of the Satanic Temple. Now, we see, and I'll show you the clip from Fox News, because Fox News is really using this stuff now to gaslight their audience and get them angry about what's going on. Of course, people should be angry about seeing any type of satanic garbage around them. But all one really needs to start thinking about is how these people are starting to identify as Satanists, how they're joining these organizations, right? How they're allowed out in the public and they have more freedoms than the rest of us actually have. Now, you're going to hear some quotes from Fox News like, freedom is dangerous. The price of freedom is dangerous. And they're not going to mention the things that are actually going on around us, because we know there's massive censorship going on with Christians. They don't talk about that in the mainstream media. Whether it's all of us on YouTube, whatever other social media sites you're on, Christians and Christians' viewpoints are getting censored. This type of crap is getting promoted. So, again, if you're not familiar with the Satanists, what the Satanists do is they go into all these places that there are, Christmas, Christianity, and the after-school programs. And the whole purpose of them going there is they want Christians to push back and try to eliminate them so that they can sue. And then they have to make a choice whether they're going to remove the Satanic Temple from this location. And if they try to do that, then Christianity also has to be removed. That's the point, because with this New World Order, Christianity will be removed. And this ultimately is a war on Christianity. So the other thing to note is I love how they talk about Christmas. I mean, this is just one of the funnier things. If you're not awake yet to the fact that Christmas is a pagan holiday. Now, again, I don't sit here and pass judgment on what you decide to do with your family. If you want to do that, we all got screwed over pretty much. We all grew up in this where Christmas was like a big thing and everybody loves the time of year and the lights and the nostalgia. So it's kind of a difficult thing. It's hard to accept. I know when I first woke up, I was pretty angry about a lot of the stuff that I learned many, many years ago with the pagan holidays and how this stuff was pushed onto us, and our parents and our grandparents were pretty much clueless about it. But I love how they talk about this. They're like, this is really offensive, because this is a Christian holiday, Christmas. And in reality, it's not. I mean, this goes back to Saturnalia. You could look at Nimrod and Santa Claus and the comparisons there. And they talk about it like this is what I want you to listen to. They talk about this like it's a Christmas, that this is a Christian holiday, because of course they want you to believe this is the birth of Christ. Now, anybody out there who really has studied these things knows that this is not the birth of Jesus Christ. We know not just Saturnalia, the winter solstice. This is a pagan holiday, okay? And they put Jesus in there. Now, if you want to celebrate Jesus, you could do whatever you want on whatever day you feel like it. I mean, we should all really be celebrating Jesus Christ every single day, however we can, by honoring him, by following God's commandments and how we live our lives. But take note of a few things here. So this satanic Hail Santa Christmas tree goes up at a display at a Wisconsin museum where there are 66 displays. So you have your 666 there. And also keep in mind some of the stuff that they do to gaslight, because they're trying to compare, this type of thing to what's going on in the Middle East. And they say that it's the same thing if somebody walked into a temple or a synagogue and they waved a flag of the hummus, the food. That's what this is the equivalent to. When in reality, Christmas really has nothing to do with Jesus. And most people out there actually believe that there's a few dates. A lot of people believe April 1st, April Fool's is actually the date. Other people believe the 11th day of September is the date of Christ's actual birth. You could do research on these things for yourself. But obviously, this type of story they love to start using as a gaslighting mechanism for Christians. What Christians really should do, and what we've really allowed to happen, is these satanic organizations to infiltrate our society when they should never be allowed to actually exist. These people should all be on watch lists. And of course, they're not. They're not. And they do these things every single year. And it's the same response, which is like, I guess they shouldn't be allowed to really exist in our society, because if you knew what they actually did and what they actually believe. Now, I'm not saying every single person who joins this temple because it is a front. But Satanists at the core, what they follow and what they do when it comes to sacrifice and other things and the perversion and just the gross acts, they wouldn't be allowed to exist. They never have been allowed to actually exist. That's why you've heard throughout history the things that have been done to witches and Satanists over and over and over again. Now, of course, we have to accept this. And at the same time, what they're trying to do is obviously a psychological op where they're trying to remove Christianity. So Fox News loves to cover this. They love to bring up the Satanic Temple all of a sudden. I don't know when this started, but when I began doing all this stuff, I was pretty much the only one covering the Satanic Temple. They become so mainstream now. They've been on Tucker Carlson. They've been on all these Fox shows, love covering it because they really get their Christian audience in a frenzy. Now, I don't do it to get you in a frenzy. I cover this as a Christian, and because of the content that I cover, it fits right in with that, but also to let you know what they're trying to do psychologically here. Because it's not, they don't mention the fact that what they want to do is eliminate Christianity, that this is a government-funded organization that's never going to go away. They mention that they're sue-happy, like they love to go in and they love to sue. Of course they do, because they have these quote-unquote pro bono lawyers that work for them. But in reality, it's our government who is, probably putting the best lawyers they possibly can at the defense of these people. And these people just have all this money. Nobody, asks where they get money from because, they're like, oh, they sell merch. They barely get views in their YouTube channel and their social media accounts. This is government funded, and they're sue happy because they want to remove Christianity from every single place in this country. And by doing these types of things, Christians have to make a choice. They have to say, hey, we're either going to let them be here or we're all just going to have to disband and not allow it to happen because we don't want to corrupt our kids with this stuff. In reality, none of these satanic organizations, if people actually understood what they really do, should be allowed to exist in our society. And if there was ever something to have people on a terror watch list for, it would be being a part of these types of organizations if you really know what they actually did. Of course, they present themselves as a facade where they're like, oh, we don't really do that. We don't really care about the devil. We're just doing this because we care about people's rights. And all the suckers out there, like they always do, fall in line and believe whatever they say. But we all know the devil is a liar. And so are their minions that follow. But here is the clip from Fox News. Keep in mind some of the stuff. They even talk about the origins of Christmas going back to the Garden of Eden, I think the woman says. I don't know where they're getting some of this stuff from, but look at them gaslight the Christians.
A Wisconsin congressman is outraged over one of the trees on display at a Christmas tree festival in his town. The tree by the Satanic Temple is covered in red lights, of course, pentagrams, and an ornament reading, Hail Santa, a nod to the phrase, Hail Satan. The congressman who represents that community sounded off on it earlier on Sunday Morning Futures.
Conservatives are often accused of launching a culture war or focusing or fixating on cultural issues. But here is a perfect example of how that's not what's happening. What's happening is we're just trying to defend basic traditions or defend our children in the midst of these basic traditions from the encroachment of woke ideology or offensive, upside-down cultural propaganda.
So, Nicole, that is Mike Gallagher, Republican, Wisconsin. He makes a good point, doesn't he?
It's interesting. So I was looking at this, and what we're actually talking about, this Wisconsin Railroad Museum puts on this display of holiday trees every year. There were 66 different displays, the majority being nonprofits, private businesses. Only 6 were actually Christian related. And the reality is holiday trees aren't necessarily equate with the Christian holiday of Christmas. In fact, they go back to 15th century Germany, and it was a celebration of the Garden of Eden. So I certainly don't think that Christians should be offended by some of these non-Christian trees, just like I don't believe non-Christians should be offended by Christmas trees at all. What I found concerning when I really looked into this was that Satanic nonprofit is part of a bigger federal group, and on their website, so they're petitioning for access to abortion, and what they say is to, quote, continue performing voluntary abortions as part of its religious rituals. And to me, that is a huge ordeal. And so when we're talking about the spirit of the holidays and families coming together, and especially a railroad museum where you're going to have children, right, these are certainly nothing that children should be exposed to. And so we cannot take a family-friendly event and put things in front of them that could be harmful for them.
That's the thing, Alicia. This is about kids.
Right.
And they're going to go to a Christmas decoration, a Christmas event, and they have to be shown all of this stuff. I mean, it's just amazing that at this point, I saw on Fox and Friends earlier, you had a guest on, and they said this is like waving a Hamas or Hezbollah flag at a synagogue, right? In other words, it's just a benign event. Can't we just have something nice anymore?
Well, and then you also have to think about parents who are now ending up in conversations that they didn't expect because they were just going to see a bunch of Christmas trees. And that's happening time and time again with parents when all of a sudden they're in these conversations that they really never expected to have with their kids. But I was thinking about, and I agree with you, Nicole, also on some of this, because I was thinking about a conversation we had yesterday about Christmas, and now people celebrate Christmas and not necessarily in a Christian way. So do these folks have a right to be there? Yes. Is it in the Christmas spirit? No.
There was also, Joey, a gender diversity tree there as well, and trans flags at this particular event. Would you take your children to something like this?
If it were my hometown, and it's something that was a celebrated tradition, which is how this read to me. I'm not there. I don't know the size of this town or the demographics. Yeah. Yes, absolutely would. The thing about freedom is it's dangerous, but it's worth it. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the First Amendment. My version of this, which hits me to my core, is going to bury a good buddy at Arlington National Cemetery and having to go through the Westboro Baptist Church protesters in order to get there. And having to decide for myself, is it worth going to jail to take that dude out with my fist? And that's what I wanted to do, and he earned it, but I didn't do it. You know, partly because I don't have legs anymore, and fighting isn't really on the table for me unless I'm biting your kneecaps off from the ground. But my point is, I had to deal with that. I had to live through it. I had to shelter his family from seeing it. They're saying horrible, hateful things about people that serve in the military. They're out of Kansas, and they target places because they're all lawyers, and they're trying to bait you in. That's what organizations like this are doing. They're trying to bait you in, attack them, tell them they can't put their tree there so they can go sue you. There are organizations like that exist under the guise of the First Amendment. You got to be smarter, and you got to see it coming, and you can't give up things just because they show up.
And this is the beauty.
Yeah.
These people, parents, if they don't like the community they're in, they can choose to move away.
That's the thing, right? If we believe in free speech and absolute free speech, then I guess you allow this and then let the consumer decide whether you want.
So you could see some of the talking points in there, right? About, oh man, this is the equivalent if they, they want Christians to be fired up over this. And Christians shouldn't be just fired up. What we need to do as Christians is we need to start, this stuff shouldn't be allowed to exist, but we've become pushovers. Christians have become pushovers. And all the rights that are out there actually are for these people, not for us. Because we see when they talk about, well, equal rights and equality, and they're allowed to have, their freedom of religion. Well, the majority of us don't even have freedom of speech anymore because they consider our speech dangerous. But their speech is, of course, not dangerous because it's cloaked in stuff like love and oneness. So everybody out there is like, oh, they should be allowed to. But, oh, somebody like this guy talking on YouTube, oh, that's dangerous. That could lead to some type of thing by actually exposing who these people really are. Of course, yeah, it could lead to an uprising of and a cleansing of the United States of America, where we cleanse it of organizations like this because these organizations are indeed dangerous. Because look at the things that they care about. They have two goals, like I've always said, and I'll continue to say in every video I do covering them. If you go look at what they stand for, their number one thing has to do, coincidentally, of course, with women's reproductive rights. That's all they care about. That's all they talk about. And they're, oh, yeah, we care so. Well, what do you think that's for? It's because of the sacrifice of the child. And number two, the other thing is they like to go after people who are victims of abuse, who claim that they're victims of satanic abuse when they were children. And nobody goes, hey, whatever these people might believe, they were abused as kids. Why are you going after them? Why are you standing outside protesting, mocking these people who have been abused? And they just claim that all these people who are there are making it up, right? They're making it up and they're trying to attack Satanists. Well, that's not true at all, actually, because the core of all these things that happen, this abuse to children, goes back to satanic teachings, right? And this goes back to the Old Testament and Baal worship. So let's take a quick look here at the Fox News' propaganda article. Well, it's not really propaganda, but I mean, they're obviously using this in the wrong, having these types of narratives out there and then having us supposed to be able to look at this and then sit back and accept it. The reality is that the church needs to rise up against these things, and it doesn't, right? What we see actually is that the church accepts this. We see that the church accepts people coming into the church who are wearing the opposite clothing and teaching. The church is allowing and accepting all these things in our culture. And that's what the real problem, that's where it lies, is that the church should have a backbone. And, we should be not, it shouldn't even be a debate. You just go, no, that's not existing. It's not an organization. And if you knew what they actually taught, everybody out there would go, oh, yeah, we don't want that, because that would be the same, in the mindset, like I'm using the serial killers a lot as the mindset, because that's what it is. It'd be like, oh, should we allow Ted Bundy and Dahmer and all these guys, if they were alive, should we allow them to start their own religion where they have all these followers? You'd be like, well, what are they teaching? They'd be like, oh, we're teaching them how to knit. No, I don't think so. People would be like, well, they have in common is they're serial killers. So are they teaching everyone out there how to be serial killers, or are they all like-minded? People are obviously joining it because they're interested in what these people have done or are doing. So they're probably just like a herd of serial killers. We probably should disband this whole organization. That's really what the equivalent of this is, right? So the Wisconsin Museum, and you heard the politician, of course, they love doing this to their audience with the 66 trees on display. The Wisconsin Museum is facing backlash after its annual Christmas tree festival included a Christmas tree from the Satanic Temple. And again, not mentioning at all the origins of Christmas, the origins of the Christmas tree, the pagan connection to it all, Saturnalia, etc. They're saying Christmas is Christian, and a lot of people that should be really the debate that's going on. But it is a Wisconsin museum, by the way. We're not talking about a school. We're talking about some Wisconsin museum. That's actually doing this. So, I mean, where are we really headed with this? Like, what are they trying to do? Say that the museum can't have these people can't put their tree up and this is where you start getting into the fine line of like what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And we have to accept everything or remove everything. And ultimately, it's not about accepting everything. It's about removing everything. Remember, I talked about this with communism. It's about canceling everything out. So Christianity's going to get canceled out, and so is all these satanic organizations, because they're just a front for what's to come after, which is the one world religion. So the National Railroad Museum featured 66 trees on display. The tree from the Satanic Temple of Wisconsin invoked the ear of a Republican congressman who called it cultural propaganda and offensive. Of course, you can look at all the people who were standing there from the National Railroad Museum, from the Satanic Temple of Wisconsin at the National Railroad Museum. And again, like I keep saying, look at how they form. You could tell who they are by how they look, how they dress. Okay, this is how you infiltrate with a psychosis in our society. You could create human beings. You know what their religious affiliation is, what their political affiliation is by how they look, how they dress. Look at them. Would you look at them in the streets and be like, oh, these are conservative, good look? You can just look at them. They don't even need to have a satanic shirt on, obviously, to look at them and know what their ideologies are, right? They're formulating and manufacturing human beings. This goes back to Tavistock. This goes back to all of the indoctrination and the mind control that they've put into movies, film, to get people to dress and act a certain way. And then you even know what they like in the bedroom based on how they dress and how they act or how they talk. Okay, they're molding and formulating these people. There's a formula they're using to create these types of people, right? And these people are completely brain dead. So to say conservatives are often accused of launching a culture war or focusing or fixating on cultural issues, but here's a perfect example of how that's not what's happening. What's happening is we're just trying to defend basic traditions or defend our children in the midst of these basic traditions from the encroachment of woke ideology or offensive upside-down culture or propaganda. And again, this happens every single year. This is not new. The tree belonging to the Satanic Temple was adorned with red lighting and beads, pentagrams, and various ornaments with one reading, Hail Santa. And again, people look at this stuff and they don't even realize, oh, there's a star, right? An upside-down Baphomet star. They're like, that's a pentagram. That's witchcraft. Yeah, it is. But then at the same time, they don't look at like all these corporations that use the same exact thing, the same exact logo, from Starbucks to the Dallas Cowboys to the Dallas Stars. I've done these lists over and over and over again. Pretty much every organization uses a star in their logo, okay? It's more common than the all-seeing eye because it's not as obvious, right? People think, we've all been trained like, oh, it's a star. Reaching for the stars in the sky. It's not even what a star would look like. It's a 5-pointed star. It's a pentagram, okay? Just because the lines aren't going through it. Most of these idiots out there refuse to see it. I even got arguments recently with the Dolly Parton video. Like, that's not a pentagram. I'm a Cowboys fan. Okay, well, no one's saying you're a devil worshiper or Satanist because you like the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe a loser, but, I'm just kidding. But, they take it as a personal attack when they hear a lot of this stuff, and you have to just separate it, okay? Even with Christmas. It's hard to do, but you got to separate. You got to put your pride down and realize that all of our culture and all the things we get indoctrinated with is, of course, one big satanic indoctrination. So, as you heard, they were talking about the gender diversity tree, which included pink and blue colored flags and ornaments with such things as protect trans kids. I mean, this is just all the same stuff that we see over and over again. And they're continually promoting this and pushing this because nobody would ever see this at the Wisconsin thing. So Fox News covers this because this is done by design. Fox News wants this out there. We all know Fox News is controlled, and they gaslight Christians with this stuff. And they want you to put your foot in the sand. And the foot in the sand is, well, we can either allow them to put their tree up, or everybody has to remove it and get rid of their trees, right? Which is ultimately what they want. Now, you can look at it from the perspective and say, well, we should just get rid of the trees because it's pagan. Well, take that perspective out of it. Ultimately, it's about the cancellation of Christianity, the cancellation of the Satanic Temple. It's going to get to a point where you go, well, all right, well, to get rid of them and protect the kids, I guess we'll have to get rid of Christianity. It's the removal of all, right? They have to destroy everything to bring about this new world order globalist system. That includes all religion, that includes all speech, that includes all everything, right? It's all going to be one. So everything has to crumble, then the phoenix rises from the ashes. So you heard some of the stuff, about freedom is dangerous. I've never heard, how is freedom dangerous? Freedom doesn't even exist. They cherry pick what, is allowed to be freedom and what isn't anymore, because now words are dangerous, right? Now, those words are hurting people's feelings with hate speech and all this other crap. Because even Fox News plays into that. The whole topic of hate speech should just be automatically eliminated. But Fox News, of course, lures their audience, and they're like, well, that would be considered hate speech. Let's look at this. Oh, that was really mean. That is hate speech. There shouldn't be such a thing as hate speech. It's so ridiculous. But we know that they're the ones who are obviously getting Christians on board with that stuff as well, and Christians don't realize it's ultimately to get rid of the Bible, because ultimately they're going to look at the Bible and say it's the ultimate book of hate. That's where this is all headed towards. These people don't realize it. So anyway, I wanted to cover it because I always cover their satanic displays going out, the reaction to it, what it's really about. And now more and more, because usually it's just these local affiliates that I cover. Now we're seeing Fox News constantly talking about the Satanic Temple, which is obviously being done by design. They're luring in a Christian audience there, and they're hurting them the way they want to. Of course, that's with Donald Trump and every other thing that they're, doing by design, right? This is all a government psychological operation, and Christians are the target. That's why Fox News is allowed to exist and stand, even though it's very easy to look at them and see what they're doing. But for some out there, it's not. And they go, well, it's the only alternative I have. And it's not. Shut the TV off. Don't let these people hurt you. Because what they're doing isn't just going to end up really messing and ruining and destroying the lives of many Christians. What they're going to end up doing is hurting you exactly where they want to make you a sitting duck for what they have coming. And that's what I worry about with the red and blue states. So the Satanic Temple, folks, happy Saturnalia from them. Hail Santa. Ha ha. Maybe people start correlating Santa and Satan after hearing that, but probably not, because most people don't want to accept that with Christmas, like they don't want to accept most of the things that we've all been indoctrinated with, which are pagan, occultic, because it's hard for them to separate. And I understand it, but over time, the longer you're awake, the more easy it is, because you just go, whatever. It's all corrupt. I don't need any of it. All I need is Jesus Christ, my Bible, and all you need is the Word of God, and that's the truth. I thank you for being here. Hope you're all well. God bless you as always, and your families.